The lights of Orbital Dock 7 never turned off, and Marcus Webb had learned to live with that constant glow a long time ago. He had worked the night shift for 15 years now, and he knew every corner of this place like he knew his own small apartment back on the residential level. Marcus was 42 years old, and he had accepted certain things about his life. He would probably never get married. He would probably never have children. He would probably spend the rest of his working years pushing a mop across these same metal floors and watching other people live their lives. Every night he saw families reunite after long journeys across the stars. He saw lovers run into each other's arms after months apart. He saw children jump up and down with excitement when their parents finally came home from distant planets. Marcus watched all of this, and he felt happy for them. But there was always a small ache in his chest that never quite went away. Night started like any other night. Marcus clocked in at his usual time and grabbed his cleaning card from the supply room. Old Danny, who worked the day shift, gave him a tired wave as they passed each other in the hallway. Quiet night. Danny said they always are, Marcus replied, but tonight would not be quiet at all. Marcus was cleaning near Terminal 12 when he first noticed her. She was sitting alone on a cargo crate near the far wall, and something about the way she sat made him stop and look more carefully. She was not human. That much was obvious right away. Her skin was a beautiful silver blue color that seemed to shimmer slightly under the station lights. She had 4 thin antennae on her head that drooped downward in a way that somehow looked very sad to Marcus. Even though he had never seen this species before, she was wearing what looked like a fancy dress made of flowing white fabric that sparkled when she moved. It was clearly meant for a special occasion, but the dress was wrinkled now, and there was a small stain on the bottom edge, like she had been sitting in that same spot for a very long time. Next to her sat a small travel case and a bouquet of flowers. The flowers were wilted and brown at the edges. They had been fresh once, but that time had clearly passed many hours ago. Marcus stood there for a moment just watching. He had seen aliens cry before, and he had learned that different species showed their sadness in different ways. This woman was not making any sound, but something about the way her antennae hung low and the way her shoulders curved inward told him everything he needed to know. She was completely and utterly alone. Marcus looked around the terminal. There were other people walking past, but nobody stopped. Nobody seemed to notice her at all, or if they did notice, they simply did not care. Something in Marcus' chest tightened. He knew what it felt like to be invisible. He knew what it felt like to sit somewhere and wait for someone who would never come. He pushed his cleaning cart to the side and walked over to where she sat. The woman looked up at him as he approached, and Marcus could see that her eyes were a deep purple color. They were wet with tears that she was trying very hard not to let fall. "Excuse me," Marcus said gently. "Are you okay?" The woman stared at him for a long moment, like she was trying to figure out if he was really talking to her or if this was some kind of trick. "I am fine," she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. Marcus nodded. Slowly, he did not believe her, but he was not going to push. She was clearly having a terrible day, and the last thing she needed was some stranger demanding answers. "Would you like some coffee?" Marcus asked. He held up the thermos he always carried with him. "It is hot, and it is not very good, but it is something." The woman tilted her head to the side, and her antennae lifted slightly with what Marcus guessed was curiosity. "What is coffee?" she asked. Marcus smiled. "It is a human drink. We make it from beans and water. It is bitter, but most of us cannot survive without it." The woman considered this for a moment, and then she nodded. Marcus poured some of the dark liquid into the thermos cap and handed it to her. She took a small sip, and her face twisted into an expression that made Marcus laugh out loud. "It is bitter," she said, "but also sweet somehow and warm." "Yeah," Marcus said. "That is coffee." The woman took another sip, and this time she did not make the face. She just held the warm cap between her hands and stared down at it. "My name is Marcus." Marcus said, I work here, I clean the floors and fix things that break. The woman looked up at him again, and this time there was something softer in her purple eyes. My name is Lily, she said. It is not my real name, but humans cannot pronounce my real name, so I chose this one from a book I read about Earth. It is a nice name. Marcus said, Lily are flowers. They are very beautiful. Lily smiled, but it was a sad smile. Thank you. Marcus sat down on the cargo crate next to her. He knew he should probably get back to work, but something told him that his dirty floors could wait. This woman needed someone to talk to, and Marcus had always been a good listener. If you do not mind me asking, Marcus said. What are you doing here all alone? Lily was quiet for a long time. Her antennae drooped low again, and she clutched the thermos cap tighter. I came here to be married, she said finally. I traveled for 8 months across 3 star systems to meet my intended. His name is Keth, and he is a wealthy merchant from my homeworld. Our families arranged a match when I was very young. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He was starting to understand what had happened here. Keth came to meet me this morning, Lily continued. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Now he looked at me for less than 1 minute, and then he said that I was too old. He said that I was past my prime, and that he would not accept damaged goods. He left on his shuttle, and he did not look back. Marcus felt anger rise up in his chest. What do you mean too old? You look young to me. Lily made a sound that might have been a laugh, but there was no joy in it. I am 35 years old by human counting. In my culture, that is considered very old for a bride. Most Valari women are married by 25. I waited because my family could not afford the journey costs until now. She paused, and her voice got even quieter. In my culture, when a bride is rejected, she brings shame to her entire family. I cannot go home. There is no home for me anymore. My family has already told others that I am married. If I return alone, they will lose everything. Marcus sat there in silence for a moment, letting her words sink in. This woman had traveled across the galaxy for 8 months to meet someone who had promised to be her husband, and that person had taken one look at her and thrown her away like she was nothing. That is the cruelest thing I have ever heard. Marcus said. Lily shrugged. It is just how things are. No, Marcus said firmly. It is not just how things are. It is wrong. What kind of person travels 8 months to meet someone and then rejects them because of their age? That is not culture. That is cruelty. Lily looked at him with wide eyes like she could not believe what she was hearing. You are very strange, she said. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but I am also right. They sat together in silence. After that, Marcus refilled her coffee cup twice, and Lily drank it without complaint. Eventually, Marcus had to get back to work, but before he left, he gave Lily his communicator code. If you need anything, he said. Anything at all, you call me. Lily took the code and held it like it was something precious. Why are you being so kind to me? She asked Marcus. Thought about that question for a moment. Because someone should be, he said finally, and then he went back to his floors and his mop and his quiet life. But something had changed inside him. Something had woken up, and Marcus Webb was not the kind of man who could walk away from someone who needed help. 3 days passed and Lily was still at the dock. Marcus came to check on her every night during his shift, and every night she was in the same spot, sitting on that same cargo crate with her small travel case beside her. The wilted flowers were gone now, but everything else was the same. Other people at the dock had started to notice her too, but not in a kind way. Marcus heard the whispers in the break room. Some workers thought she was suspicious and should be reported. Others just laughed and made cruel jokes about the alien woman who had been left behind like lost luggage. Marcus ignored them all. He brought Lily food from the station cafeteria every night and sat with her during his breaks. Sometimes they talked, and sometimes they just sat together in comfortable silence. Either way, Marcus found himself looking forward to those moments more than anything else in his day. Lily told him stories about her homeworld, a planet called Velar that orbited a dim red star far away from Earth. She described violet oceans that sang when the wind blew across them, and forests full of trees that glowed with soft light at night. She told him about her family and her childhood, and the dreams she had once held before those dreams got smaller and smaller with each passing year. Marcus listened to every word. He was not a man who talked much about himself, but Lily had a way of asking questions that made him want to answer. He told her about growing up in foster homes on Earth, moving from family to family, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. He told her about the relationships that had come and gone over the years, and how he had eventually stopped trying. He told her about his small apartment on the residential level, with its walls full of old books, and his cat named Professor, who was grumpy but loyal. "You named your cat?" Professor Lily asked with amusement in her voice. "He is very smart," Marcus said seriously. "He judges me every day." Lily laughed, and it was the first real laugh Marcus had heard from her. The sound made something warm spread through his chest. And the third day, Marcus arrived at the dock to find 2 station security officers standing near Lily. He walked faster until he was close enough to hear what they were saying. "You cannot stay here," the first officer said. His voice was not cruel, but it was firm. "This is a transit area, not a residence. I have nowhere else to go," Lily said quietly. "That is not our problem," the second officer said. This one was less kind. "The rules are clear. If you do not have a sponsor or a valid transit visa, you will be sent to the refugee processing center on Station 9. Marcus felt his blood go cold. He had heard stories about Station 9. Everyone who worked the docks had heard those stories. The processing center there was overcrowded and underfunded. People who went in sometimes did not come out for years, and when they did, they were not the same excuse. "Me," Marcus said, stepping forward. "I am her sponsor." Officers turned to look at him. The first one raised an eyebrow. "And you are Marcus Webb," he said, "maintenance supervisor, Dock 7. I have worked here for 15 years. You can check my records." The officers exchanged a look. The second one pulled out a datapad and typed something into it. After a moment, he frowned. "Your file checks out," he admitted. "But being a sponsor means taking legal responsibility for this individual. That includes housing, employment, and any debts or legal issues she might ever. You sure you want to take that on?" Marcus did not hesitate. "I am sure." The first officer shrugged. "It is your choice. Sign here, and she's your problem." Marcus signed the form, and the officers walked away without another word. Lily stared at him with wide purple eyes. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "You barely know me." "Know enough," Marcus said. "But I have nothing to offer you." Lily said, "I have no money, no skills that are useful here. I cannot even speak your language properly. I am a burden." "You are not a burden," Marcus said firmly. "You are a person. And where I come from, we do not throw people away just because they do not have anything to offer." Lily was silent for a long moment. Her antennae moved in ways that Marcus was starting to recognize as signs of deep emotion. "On my world," she said finally, "what you just did would be considered very strange. A person does not take responsibility for a stranger without expecting something in return. Maybe that is why your world is wrong," Marcus said. Lily looked at him, and for a moment, Marcus thought she might cry. But instead, she smiled, a small, sad smile. "Perhaps it is," she said. That night, Marcus took Lily to his apartment. It was not much, just 2 small rooms with a tiny kitchen and a bathroom that sometimes had hot water. Professor the cat hissed at Lily when she walked through the door, but within an hour he was curled up on her lap purring while she stroked his orange fur. "I think he likes me," Lily said with wonder. "He does not like anyone," Marcus said. "That cat has hated every person I have ever brought home." "You must be special," Lily smiled, but there was still sadness in her eyes. The next morning, Marcus woke up early. He had not slept well because his mind would not stop racing with thoughts about the future. He had taken responsibility for Lily, but he had not really thought about what that meant. She could not go home. She could not stay at the dock forever. She needed a real solution, and then an idea came to him. An idea, so Simple and so crazy that Marcus almost laughed out loud. He found Lily in the kitchen trying to figure out how to make coffee. Professor was sitting on the counter watching her with his usual judgmental expression. "Lily," Marcus said. She turned to look at him. "Yes, marry me." Lily dropped the coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, and Professor jumped down and ran into the other room, but Lily did not move. She just stared at Marcus like he had grown a second head. "What did you say? Marry me?" Marcus repeated. "If we get married, you will have full legal status on this station. You can work anywhere you want. You can travel anywhere you want. Nobody can send you to that processing center or deport you back to your homeworld." Lily shook her head slowly. "You do not understand what you are asking. In my culture, marriage is forever. There is no way out once the bond is made. And I am old, Marcus. I am past my prime. I cannot give you children easily. I would be a poor wife by any standard." Marcus took a step closer. "You keep saying you are old, but you are 35. It is not old to humans. It is barely middle of life. And I am 42. I live in a tiny apartment with a mean cat, and I work a job that nobody else wants. I am not exactly the best choice either." But why? Lily asked. "Why would you do this for me?" Because Marcus said, "Because nobody deserves to be thrown away. And because these past 3 days have been the happiest I have had in a very long time." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Her antennae moved in slow circles, and Marcus could see that she was thinking very hard on my world. She said, "Finally, marriage is a transaction, a trade of value between families. There is no room for feelings in such arrangements." "And how has that worked out for you?" Marcus asked gently. "Not well," Lily admitted. "Then try it my way." Marcus said, "Marry me. Not because of what you can give me, but because we both deserve a chance to be happy." Lily looked at him for a long time. Her purple eyes searched his face like she was looking for some sign that this was a trick or a joke. But all she found was a tired man with kind eyes, who was offering her something nobody had ever offered her before: a choice. "Yes," she said, "finally, yes, Marcus, I will marry you." Marcus smiled, and for the first time in a very long time he felt like his life was about to begin. They got married 1 week later in the small interfaith chapel on level 4 of Orbital Dock 7. The chapel was not fancy. It was just a plain room with some chairs and a small altar at the front. Different religious symbols hung on the walls to represent all the faiths that passed through the station every day. But to Marcus, it was perfect. Father Tommy was the one who performed the ceremony. He was a retired chaplain who had lived on the station for 30 years and had seen just about everything. But even he seemed surprised when Marcus asked him to marry a human and a Valar. "Are you sure about this sum?" Father Tommy asked when Marcus first came to him with the request. "I have never been more sure of anything," Marcus replied. Father Tommy looked at him for a long moment, and then he smiled. "Well, then," he said, "who am I to stand in the way of love?" The wedding was small. Marcus did not have many friends, but the ones he had came to show their support. Old Danny from the day shift was there, along with a few other workers from the dock. Lily did not have anyone from her own species, but she did not seem to mind. "I do not need a crowd," she told Marcus the night before. "I just need you on the day of the wedding." Lily wore a simple white dress that Marcus had bought from a shop on the commerce level. It was not as fancy as the dress she had worn when she first arrived, but she said she liked it better. "This one I chose myself," she said. "This one is mine." Marcus wore his best clothes, which were not very impressive, but Lily said he looked handsome anyway. Professor the cat stayed home because nobody trusted him to behave in public. The ceremony was short and simple. Father Tommy read some words about love and commitment, and then Marcus and Lily exchanged rings. The rings were plain silver bands that Marcus had saved up for, but when he put the ring on Lily's finger, he thought it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. When Father Tommy said they could kiss, Marcus hesitated. He was not sure if Valari even kissed the way humans did, but Lily solved that problem by leaning in and pressing her lips to his. Her lips were cooler than a human and slightly different in texture. but Marcus did not care. It was perfect. The small crowd cheered and clapped. Old Danny wiped a tear from his eye, even though he would deny it later. Professor would have probably knocked something over if he had been there after the ceremony. They had a small reception in the station cafeteria. It was not fancy, but Marcus' co-workers had decorated the tables with ribbons and flowers. Someone had even baked the cake, though nobody would admit to being the one who made it. Marcus watched Lily moved through the room talking to people and laughing at their jokes. Her antennae were up high now, and her whole body seemed lighter than it had been when he first found her. She looked happy, truly happy, and that made Marcus' heart feel full in a way he had never experienced before. But they were not alone in their happiness. Word of the wedding spread fast through the station and then beyond. Dock workers talked, and ship crews listened, and before long the story of the human who married the abandoned Valari bride was traveling across the stars. It reached Valari space within 2 weeks. Keth, the merchant who had rejected Lily, was the first to hear the news from his own people. A business partner mentioned it during a trade negotiation, and Keth nearly choked on his drink. She did what he demanded. She married a human, the partner said. Some lowly dock worker from Orbital 7. The whole station is talking about it. Keth's face turned a dark shade of blue, which was the Valari equivalent of going red with anger. This was not supposed to happen. He had rejected Lily because she was worthless, because she was old and past her prime. A woman like that should have disappeared into poverty and shame, not found happiness with someone else. But that was not even the worst part. The worst part was what Keth's own people were starting to say about him. If this human wanted her, one of Keth's female relatives said at a family gathering, then perhaps you were wrong to reject her. Perhaps your judgment is not as good as you think other Valari were asking similar questions. If a lowly human dock worker could see value in Lily, then why could a wealthy, educated merchant not see it? The whispers followed Keth everywhere he went. His trading partners began to look at him differently. His business deals became harder to close on the other side of the galaxy. The Galactic Council was also paying attention. The council was made up of representatives from hundreds of species, and they spent most of their time dealing with trade disputes and border conflicts. But they also studied different species to better understand them, and humans had always been a puzzle. Vex was a xenobiologist who worked for the Council Research Division. She had spent her entire career studying human behavior, and she still did not fully understand them. When she heard about the web marriage, she immediately requested permission to study the couple. Humans do not make sense, she told her colleagues. They pair bond based on factors that have no logical connection to survival or genetic fitness. They value something they call love, which appears to be a combination of chemical responses and social bonding. But they treat it as if it is the most important thing in the universe. What makes this case so interesting? One of her colleagues asked. Because Dr. Vex said this human male chose a partner that his own species would consider acceptable, but that her species had declared worthless. He saw value where others saw none. This suggests that human evaluation systems are fundamentally different from most other species in the galaxy. Darvex sent a formal request to Marcus and Lily asking if they would be willing to participate in a research study. She offered them payment and promised that the study would be non-invasive. Marcus' response was short and direct. Thank you for your interest, but we are not lab rats. We are just married. Dr. Vex was disappointed, but she was also impressed. Most species would have jumped at the chance to be paid for simply answering questions. But humans, it seemed, valued their privacy more than money. How strange, she said to herself. How very human. Back on Orbital Dock 7, Marcus and Lily settled into their new life together. It was not always easy living with another person. Never, as Lily had habits that confused Marcus, and Marcus had habits that confused Lily even more. But they talked about everything. They worked through their problems together, and every night they sat on a small couch in their apartment and watched ships come and go through the big window that looked out over the dock. I never thought I would be happy again, Lily said one night. Her head was resting on Marcus' shoulder, and Professor was purring on her lap. When Keth left me at the dock, I thought. My life was over, Marcus put his arm around her. Your life was not over, it was just beginning. You just needed someone to see that, Lily looked up at him with her purple eyes. Do you really believe that I do, Marcus said? Because the same thing happened. To me, I thought my life was set. I thought I would be alone forever. And then you showed up on that cargo crate with your wilted flowers and your sad eyes. And everything changed. Lily smiled, and her antennae curled in that way that Marcus had learned. Meant she was feeling emotional. I love you, Marcus Webb. She said. Marcus' heart nearly stopped. That was the first time she had said those words. I love you too, Lily Webb, he replied, and in that moment, surrounded by the hum of the station and the soft purring of an orange cat, two people who had been thrown away by the universe found something worth keeping: each other. 6 months had passed since the wedding, and Marcus' life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. He still worked at the dock, but his shifts felt different now. Before, he had gone to work because he had nothing else to do. Now he went to work because he wanted to provide for his family. He came home every night to a warm apartment and a wife who was happy to see him, and a cat who pretended not to care but always sat on his lap anyway. Lily had changed too. The sadness that had hung over her like a dark cloud was gone now. She smiled more. She laughed more. Her antennae stayed high and alert instead of drooping with sorrow. She had even started to make friends with some of the other workers on the station, but not everyone was happy about the way things had turned out. Keth had spent the past 6 months watching his reputation fall apart piece by piece. His trading partners had started to question his judgment. His family looked at him with disappointment instead of pride. And everywhere he went, he heard whispers about the human dock worker who had stolen his rejected bride. Keth told himself that he did not care. He told himself that Lily was worthless and that the human was welcome to her, but deep down in a place he did not want to admit existed, he knew the truth. He had made a mistake, and now everyone knew it. The only way to fix his reputation was to get Lily back. If he could convince her to leave the human and return to him, then the whole story would change. He would no longer be the fool who threw away something valuable. He would be the wise merchant who had tested a bride and then accepted her. After she proved her worth, it was not a perfect plan, but it was the only plan Keth had, so he gathered his most impressive attendants and put on his most expensive robes and booked passage to Orville Dock 7. He would offer the human money, more money than a dock worker could earn in 10 lifetimes, and when the human accepted, Keth would take Lily home and pretend that none of this had ever happened. The shuttle ride took 3 weeks. During that time, Keth practiced what he would say. He imagined the look on the human face when he saw how much money was being offered. No reasonable person would turn down such wealth, especially not for an old past prime Valari woman. When Keth arrived at the station, he was surprised by how small and plain everything looked. The corridors were narrow and industrial. The air smelled like recycling filters and cleaning fluid. How could anyone choose to live in such a place? He found Marcus in Terminal C. The human was mopping the floor. Keth stood there for a moment, watching with disbelief. This was the man who had taken his bride. This small, ordinary human, pushing a mop across a metal floor. It was almost insulting. Keth walked toward him with his attendants following close behind. The sound of their expensive shoes echoed through the terminal, and people turned to stare, but Marcus did not look up. He just kept mopping like he had not noticed anything at all. Human Keth said, "You are Marcus." Webb. Marcus glanced up for just a second and then went back to his work. "That is me." Keth felt his anger rise at the casual dismissal. "I am Keth of the Third Trading House of Velar. I have come to discuss your wife." "She is not up for discussion," Marcus said. His voice was calm, almost bored. Keth forced himself to smile. He had expected resistance. "That was why he had brought so much money. Let me be direct," he said. "I want Lily back. She was meant to be my bride, and I am willing to pay handsomely for her return. I am prepared to offer you enough credits to retire comfortably. You could buy a ship of your own, travel the galaxy, do whatever you want. You would never have to push that mop again. Marcus stopped mopping. He looked up at Kath, and his face showed no emotion at all. She is not for sale, he said. Kath blinked. Excuse me, is not for sale, Marcus repeated. She never was. That was your mistake. Kath felt his face flush with anger. You would refuse wealth beyond your comprehension for a past prime female. Do you have any idea what you are turning down? I have a pretty good idea, Marcus said. Dang, you are a fool. Kath snapped. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but at least I am a fool who knows the value of what he has. He went back to mopping. Kath stood there in shock. No one had ever dismissed him like this. No one had ever turned down his money. No one had ever looked at him like he was nothing more than an annoying interruption. You do not understand, Kath said. His voice was rising now. I am offering you everything. A dock worker like you could never dream of having what I am offering. You clean floors for a living. You are nothing. Marcus stopped mopping again. He looked at Kath, and this time there was something hard in his eyes. You want to know the difference between us, he said. You looked at Lily, and you saw an expiration date. You saw numbers on a chart that told you she was not worth your time. You did not see her. You did not hear her stories about the violet oceans on her homeworld. You did not watch her eyes light up when she tastes something new or hear her laugh at Professor when he knocks things off the table. You did not see a person. You saw a product. Marcus took a step closer to Kath. I looked at her, and I saw someone worth knowing. Someone worth loving. Someone who deserved better than being thrown away by someone who was supposed to protect her. That is the difference between us. You calculate worth. I see people. Kath opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Now, if you will excuse me, Marcus said, I have work to do. He turned his back on Kath and continued mopping. Kath stood there for a long moment. His attendants shifted uncomfortably behind him. They had never seen their master treated like this. They had never seen anyone speak to him with such complete lack of respect. But what could Kath do? The human had refused his offer. There was nothing more to say. No amount of money would change the outcome. The human simply did not want what Kath was selling. We are leaving, Kath said finally. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. He turned and walked away without looking back. His attendants hurried after him. None of them spoke. As they made their way back to the shuttle, they passed through the main terminal. And that is when Kath saw her. Lily was standing near the information desk, talking to another worker. She was smiling, and her antennae were up high with happiness. She looked healthy. She looked content. She looked like a completely different person from the broken woman he had left on that cargo crate 6 months ago. She looked beautiful. Kath stopped walking and stared at her, and for just a moment he felt something he had never felt before, regret. But the moment passed quickly. Kath pushed the feeling down and kept walking. He told himself that he did not care. He told himself that the human was welcome to her. He told himself that he had made the right choice, that deep down he knew the truth. He had thrown away something precious, and now it belonged to someone else. The story of what happened that day spread across the station within hours. By the end of the week, it had spread to other stations and ships. By the end of the month, it had reached dozens of worlds. The humans had a word for what Marcus had done. They called it loyalty. Other species had similar concepts, but the human version was different. Human loyalty was not based on what you could get from someone. It was not about trade or advantage or self-interest. Human loyalty was about choosing someone and then sticking with that choice no matter what. It was irrational. It was inefficient. It made no logical sense, and yet somehow it worked. The galaxy watched and wondered. Why else did humans value that other species had overlooked? What other strange qualities did they possess that made them different? Some species found human behavior confusing. Others found it frightening, but a very small few, found it inspiring. Maybe they thought just maybe there was something worth learning from these strange Stubborn creatures who loved without reason and kept what they treasured no matter the cost, and on orbital. Doc 7. Marcus Webb finished mopping Terminal C and went home to his wife completely unaware that he had just become a legend. 2 years had passed since Marcus found Lily sitting alone on that cargo crate, and everything was different. Now the apartment had changed first. New curtains hung in the windows. Colorful rugs covered the cold metal floors. Pictures and memories decorated every wall. There was a shelf full of books that Marcus had collected over the years, and next to it was a smaller shelf with items that Lily had brought from her travels. A crystal that glowed faintly in the dark. A small statue carved from the wood of a singing tree. A piece of fabric in colors that did not exist on Earth. Professor. The cat had also changed. He was older now and slower, but he had grown to love Lily as much as he tolerated Marcus. Every morning he waited by her chair until she woke up, and every night he curled up between them on the bed. He had even stopped hissing at visitors, though he still gave them judgmental looks. Marcus had been promoted to shift supervisor 3 months after the wedding. It was not a glamorous title, but it meant better pay and more respect. The other workers looked up to him now. They came to him with their problems and asked for his advice. Marcus was not sure he deserved the trust, but he did his best to earn it. Lily had found her own path. She had always been good with languages, and it turned out she was even better than she knew. Within a year, she had learned to speak 5 different alien languages fluently. The station hired her as an official translator, and now she spent her days helping travelers and merchants communicate with each other. She was good at it, not just because she knew the words, but because she understood what it felt like to be lost and alone in a strange place. She treated every person who came to her desk with kindness and patience, and they remembered that they came back to her again and again, even when other translators were available. The dock was different now too. Word had spread about the station where a human had married an abandoned alien bride. People came from all over just to see the place where it had happened. Some of them were curious. Some of them were romantic. Some of them just wanted to believe that love could happen anywhere to anyone. Marcus thought all the attention was silly, but Lily said it was beautiful. People need hope, she told him, and we can give them that just by being happy. So they kept being happy. They went on vacations when they could afford it. A trip to Mars to see the red deserts, a journey to a Valari sanctuary world where Lily reconnected with her sister, who had also been cast out for being different. They visited strange planets and met strange people and collected memories like other people collected souvenirs. But the biggest change came in their 3rd year together. It started with a call from the station's social services office. There were 2 human children living in the lower levels, whose parents had disappeared on a cargo ship that never came back. The children had no family and no one to care for them. They needed a home. Marcus and Lily talked about it for a long time. They had always known that having biological children would be difficult. Valari and humans were not naturally compatible, and the medical procedures were expensive and uncertain. They had made peace with that fact years ago, but adoption was different. Adoption was about choosing to love someone who needed it, and that was something they both understood very well. They brought the children home a week later. Emma was 8 years old, with curly brown hair and serious eyes that had seen too much for her age. Her brother Jack was 5, and he hid behind his sister whenever strangers came near. They were both scared and confused, and they did not trust anyone. It took months to earn that trust. Months of patient words and warm meals and bedtime stories. Months of letting them know that this home was permanent, that nobody was going to throw them away. Professor helped more than anyone expected. The grumpy old cat seemed to understand that these children needed gentleness. He let Emma pet him whenever she wanted, and he slept on Jack's bed every night, keeping the bad dreams away. By the end of the 1st year, Emma was laughing again, and Jack had stopped hiding. They called Marcus Dad, and they called Lily Mom, and they meant it. The second adoption came a year after that. Name was Nova, and she was Vilari. She was 12 years old, and her story was painfully familiar. Her family had declared her unworthy because she was different, because she asked too many questions and did not fit the mold they had made for her. She had been sent away to a distant station and forgotten. When Lily heard about Nova, she did not hesitate. "This girl is coming home with us," she said. And Marcus agreed without argument. Nova was harder to reach than the human children had been. She was older and her wounds went deeper. She had been told her whole life that she was worthless, and she had started to believe it. Undoing that damage took time and patience and love, but they had all three of those things in abundance. Slowly, Nova began to open up. She started talking to Lily about her homeworld and her feelings. She started helping Marcus fix things around the apartment. She started playing with Emma and Jack and teaching them words in her native language. One night, Marcus came home to find all three children sitting on the floor while Lily read them a story. Professor was in the middle of the group purring loudly, and Nova was actually smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes. Marcus stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching. He thought about the man he had been before all of this, a lonely dock worker who had given up on happiness, who had accepted that his life would be small and quiet and alone. That man seemed like a stranger. Now, the Galactic Council eventually published their research paper on human pair bonding. Dr. Vex had continued her studies even without the web family participation. She had gathered data from hundreds of other sources and finally reached her conclusions. The paper was titled Human Bonding Patterns, an Analysis of Irrational Attachment, and it was read by scientists across the galaxy. The key finding was simple, but profound. Humans do not select mates for optimal genetic outcomes or resource acquisition, the paper stated. They select mates for reasons that remain difficult to quantify: companionship, emotional resonance, and a phenomenon they call love. This makes them unpredictable partners in commerce and war, but remarkably stable ones in domestic arrangements. Further study is recommended, though access remains limited, as humans tend to find such observation creepy. Marcus found a copy of the paper in a newsfeed, and he laughed so hard the professor woke up and gave him an annoyed look. "Creepy," Marcus said. "They are not wrong, Lily. Read the passage," and her antennae curled with amusement. "You married an alien after knowing her for 4 days. Perhaps you are the creepy one." Marcus thought about that for a moment. "Fair point," he admitted. He printed out the passage and framed it and hung it in the kitchen where everyone could see it. The children thought it was hilarious. Nova especially loved pointing it out to visitors. Outside the apartment, window ships came and went just like they always had. Beings from 100 worlds traveled to 1,000 destinations, carrying their hopes and dreams and fears across the endless darkness of space. And in one small home on Orbital Dock 7, a family that should never have existed sat down together for dinner. Marcus looked around the table at the faces of the people he loved. His wife, whose silver blue skin still took his breath away after all these years. His children, who had been abandoned by the universe but found their way home. His cat, who was probably plotting something that at least looked cute while doing it. Thought about all the choices that had led him here, all the small moments that had added up to this. The coffee he had offered to a stranger, the question he had asked without thinking, the ring he had put on her finger, the children he had welcomed into his home. None of it made logical sense. None of it was efficient or optimal or rational, but it was his, and it was perfect. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asked. She was watching him with those serious eyes that had grown warmer over the years. Marcus smiled. "I am thinking about how lucky I am." Lily reached over and took his hand. Her skin was cool against his, but he had long ago stopped noticing the difference. "We are all lucky," she said. "We found each other." Jack, who was now 7, looked up from his plate. "Can we have dessert?" Everyone laughed and the moment passed, but Marcus held on to it anyway. He held on to all of them. These moments, these people, this life, because that was what humans did. They held on to what they loved, and they never let go.